Hello everyone, it's Katrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique, and I'm back today with another beaded floral tutorial. And today I'm going to do a quick video to show you guys how to make this cute little cup-shaped sculpted leaf using some herringbone and peyote stitch with just a tiny bit of square stitch. So there's probably already posted a written tutorial over on the alluringboutique.com if you want to go over there and just follow along with the written instructions and the photos. That's great. But I'm going to try to catch up on videos for everything that's written and written instructions for everything that's just on video. So that's what I'm going to be working on over the next few weeks. So we don't need a whole lot of seed beads for this. For this project, I only used 2 colors of beads, and they're both 11-0. I've got the transparent olivine Toho 11-0s, and I have some silver-lined apricot dyed alabaster Miyuki seed beads in size 11-0 for some accent beads. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to do my leaf in the apricot color, and I'm going to do my accents in the green. You're going to need about a size 10 or 11 beading needle. I'm going to be using some Nymo size B. I've already got my thread stretched and conditioned, and I'm ready to get started. I like to condition my thread with the micro crystalline wax. I bought a tub of this, and I think it was on Fusion Beads, and it was a long time ago. And it comes in a little round tub like you get a condiment in at a restaurant. And you can see here that I have all of this left still, and I've been using it for years. I crammed some down into this sewing thread conditioner that you can get at Walmart. I've got a little ball of it here, and here's the other chunks out of that tub. So if you can find some, this stuff lasts forever, and it works really well. To get started, you want to go ahead and pick up one of your main colored beads and pass back through it. You can leave yourself a nice little couple of inches of thread, something that really gives you enough to hold on to. And then I'm going to pick up 8 more of my main color beads. So I'm just going to let those 8 beads fall down by my tail thread. I am going to skip over those last 2 beads and sew through the 3rd one from the top. And I'm going to pull those beads down so that they sit like a first peyote stitch, just like that. Then I'm just going to peyote to the bottom. So just pick up one, skip one, and then you'll sew through the next. And go all the way down to the bottom. So you'll have to take 3 stitches. You want to get that top bead to position side by side, like this. I got 1 more to go. Pick up one, and I'm going to, this one I will sew right straight through the stop bead. Just like that, at the bottom. And then I'll just take both threads and tighten up my work just like this. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove that thread bridge off my bottom bead. I'm just going to pull the tail thread back through so that both of my threads are coming out of the same bead, but they are both pointing in the same direction like they should be. So now we're ready just to peyote straight back to the top. Again, we're going to use the main color beads. We're going to pick up one and sew through the next one that sticks out along the side. And we should have a total of 4 stitches on this pass. So an interesting thing about this particular project, which I found here on YouTube by Premier White, when she works the round, a round doesn't go like normal peyote where you just go up as a round, down as a round. She works all the way around the figure for each round. So we're only literally halfway through with row 1. So now we've peyoteed up and we're exiting the top beads. So now we're going to do our first herringbone turn. We're going to pick up 2 beads and just sew down the bead right next to the one that we're exiting. And just pull those through so that they sit with that little familiar herringbone look. All right, so now we're just peyote down the other side of our project. And when we get to the bottom, we'll have finished the first round. Again, we're just picking up one and sewing through the next bead that sticks out along the edge of the beadwork. And here I come, and I'm making my last stitch. Here at the bottom, I'm going to sew through the last bead sticking out, but I'm also going to sew on an angle on the diagonal through that bottom bead, as you can see here. And I'm going to pull. So that here's what my beadwork looks like at this point. Now you can just get into position by sewing up through the bead right beside the one that you're currently exiting. Now we could potentially do one of our square stitch beads before we move on, but I'm going to try to teach it to you guys the same way that I did it in written form so that there's no confusion. Just go ahead and pass up through that bead, and you should be exiting the top of your bottom bead. At this point, we'll just carry on with our peyote stitch. We'll use our main color beads and pick up one, sew through the next one that sticks out along the edge of the beadwork. And we should take a total of 4 stitches. The 4th one we will sew up into the top bead of our first herringbone turn. So we'll pick up that bead, and we're just going to sew straight up into the top bead of our herringbone stitch. And now we're ready to do another turn, so we will just do another herringbone stitch by picking up 2 and sewing down the bead right beside the one we're exiting. And we will pull our beads, give them a little nudge to get them sitting in there looking like a pretty herringbone stitch. Like this. Then we're going to peyote down the opposite side. So it's not really a hard project at all. The only problem I had with Pamela's tutorial, I couldn't figure out exactly how she was getting this thing to work out at the bottom. So I took my time, I watched it a bunch of times. Finally, I just gave up and I figured out that I was going to use square stitch to correct the parts I couldn't understand. So as you see here, as I add that 3rd peyote stitch, you'll notice that I'm coming out of this bead that was sticking out. And I have this row of beads and this row of beads sitting below. So this is where I need to make my first correction. If you'll notice on my beadwork, I have the 2 beads of the herringbone turn at the top, plus the pair right below it. Then I have, my rows look like this: 4 beads, 3 beads, 4 beads, 3 beads, 4 beads, 3 beads. This is a 3 bead, so I need a 4th bead here. To make my first correction, I need to square stitch a bead right here beside this top set of 2 on the bottom of my beadwork. I'm sorry, this top set of 3. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pick up a bead. I am exiting from the bottom of this bead. On the diagonal, I am going to sew up through this bead below on the diagonal, just like this. And I'm going to pull that bead till it sits right beside the bead I'm currently exiting. And then I just need to pass right back down through that bead to complete the stitch. So just go right back down through the new bead that you just added. And this is what your beadwork should look like. So now we have corrected the second row up from the bottom. We can see that our pattern is as such. We'll have 2 herringbones at the top, a row of 4, a row of 3, row 4, row 3, row 4, row 3, row 4. And down here, we only have 2 beads. So what we got to do is we have to add 1 more bead down here at the bottom. But in order to do that, we're going to have to get into position. So I'm exiting from this bead on the edge. I'm simply going to sew back up through the bead right beside the one I'm exiting and pull my thread. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come down through the bead right next to that. And by sewing through the work in this manner, our threads get sucked in nice and neat to where they aren't visible on the beadwork. So now that's next thing I need to do is I need to come down through the very bottom bead. So I need the bead added to the left side here, so I don't come through this left bead. Give me just a second to get down here where I can actually not blind myself with my work light. Okay, so here I am, coming down through that left side bead. Yours is most likely on the right if you're right-handed. I hope this helps you to get through everything. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to grab a hold of my beadwork and just make sure that everything's nice and snug. All right, so now I'm exiting from that bottom bead. All I have to do is pick up 1 bead, and I need to sew back up through the second bead in order for that bead alignment to be correct, like a peyote stitch. So up we go. And you can see that when I pull that bead around into position, everything corrects itself. And it looks really nice and neat. I don't have any exposed thread. Now all I need to do is get into position to do my next round. So I've added a lot of thread over here, square stitching those 2 correction beads on. So what I'm going to do is I'm exiting from that second bead on the second row at the top. I'm going to come down through the 3rd bead and then on the diagonal, the bead at the bottom, just like that. I'm going to add a little bit of thread over here just because I'm using this weird color green. And I don't want to block up my beads with too much thread. So now we're just ready to peyote using the main color again. Pick up a bead, sew up through the next bead sticking out all the way to the top. If you'll notice that as you work the round this time, you're going to be adding 5 beads on this side. So our leaf is growing. And remember that 5th one, we are going to sew up through the top herringbone stitch on the side of the beadwork that we're currently working on. And then we're going to make our turn simply by picking up 2. And then we're going to sew back down through the herringbone stitch, or excuse me, the bead on the other side of the one that we're currently exiting. I'm going to make sure that I pierce my thread. So when you're working with this 9-mile, it's really easy to kind of pierce your thread as you're taking a stitch. So when in doubt, back out and start over. Now I can see that my thread is not on that needle. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pull that herringbone stitch. I like to flip my work around, so I like working this way. And now I'm just going to take my stitches down this side. So I'm going to take a total of 4, and then I think I'm ready to make my next correction. So just go ahead and peyote down. And as you add that last bead, you'll be going through just the last bead sticking out. And this is what your work should look like so far. This is the final correction that we're going to need to make here at the bottom. So we're exiting from that last bead sticking out. We need 1 more bead here along this bottom edge. So all we do is pick up 1 and sew up through the bottom bead on diagonal where below where we're exiting. Now you really want to make sure that you get this bead sitting in the proper alignment like that right there. Now I need to get into position to add some more rows. However, we're going to begin to start working some decreases as well. So if I were just going to, I need to be exiting from this bottom bead, sewing in the direction from bottom to top. Currently, I'm coming out of the top of that second bead in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to sew around until I can get myself in the proper position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up through one more bead on the diagonal above where I'm currently exiting. So this is the bead I want to sew through, the second one in on the second row. Then I'm going to pull that thread through. Now I am going to come down through the bead right beside the one I'm exiting, plus the bead below it on the diagonal, just like that. And I'm going to pull. And now all I need to do is sew up through that new bead that I added. And I'm ready to begin again. So now we're ready to work our first decrease in our peyote up this side of the beadwork. So we will just pick one up, sew through the one sticking out, and we will work all the way to the top. And during these next few rounds is when you are going to really notice that we start to get this nice sculpted shape, where this little this leaf actually starts to form this beautiful dimensional shape here. So we'll just keep on working our main color and go all the way up to the top, just like we've been doing. Our last bead will go up into the top bead of the herringbone stitch. Then at the top, we take the herringbone turn. And then we will just peyote down the other side. And then at the bottom, we will get our last bead sewn in, and then we will have to do another decrease. But you can see that we're already getting that little bit of a curve to our beadwork. So everything is working out the way that it should. Pull your beads kind of snug. The more you pull them snug, the more pronounced your little shape will be. Of course, you don't want to over pull and pull anything out of alignment. All right, so there is that round added. You can see I'm starting to get my cute little cup shape. But now we have to do another decrease. So my working thread is exiting from the bottom bead. I am going to sew up through the bead beside of it, plus one more on the diagonal, and pull my thread through. Now I haven't picked anything up. I am just working my decrease. Then I want to sew back down through the bead to the left, going towards the edge, whichever direction that is for you. And I am going to pull that thread through. Now all I have to do is simply sew up through my last bead added. And I've worked my decrease and I'm ready to begin. And we don't have any exposed thread and everything looks great. Before we carry on, I wanted to mention just a couple of things. You can work this bead as wide and as long, this leaf as wide and as long as you want. If you wanted it wider, down here at the bottom, of course, you're going to have to make your corrections before you continue on. The way that this pattern works out is it's going to continue to grow up this way, but at this point, because we're working decreases, it's going to get narrower and narrower here at the bottom. So you can actually decide when you want to start your decreases, and you can carry on in such that manner. But I'm going to go ahead and continue on. I'm going to do another round of my main color on this decrease. Now all we got to do is peyote up, just like we've been doing. And you can add your extra beads whenever you're comfortable, once you get used to it and see it'll click in your mind, and you can know where you'll have to make adjustments. So play around with it and have fun. So at this point, I'm going to add one more peyote bead into my herringbone here at the top. And I'm going to give it a nice little tug and give myself some really pretty shape going on. And I'm going to take that turn, just like we've been doing with a herringbone stitch. I'm going to pull my working thread out of the way so I don't accidentally pierce the thread. Position those beads a little bit before you move on, because you want those to look nice and neat in a nice row. And then just carry on down the side. Till you reach the last stitch. And I'll meet you at the bottom. As you add that last bead, you can go ahead and sew through the bottom bead as well on the diagonal, because at this point we already know we're going to have to make another turn and a decrease. So here's where we are. And also want to point out that if you get a little bit confused, you can always look and make sure that all of your sticking out beads on both sides of your leaf line up like they should. And that looks really good. So now I'm ready to turn around and do my decrease. I am exiting from that bottom bead. I'm going to sew up through the bead right beside of it, plus one more on the diagonal towards the center of the leaf, so that would be that third bead there. And we'll pull nice and snug. Then I'm just going to sew down through the bead right beside it, which would be the second bead in. And then I just sew up through the two beads. And I apologize if my hands are a little extra shaky today because I'm on some prednisone. All right, so what I need to do is to come up through the first bead on that second row, and then into the new bead on the diagonal, just like that, to finish my decrease. And pull my thread. And there we have performed our turnaround and our decrease. So if we take a look at my already finished leaf and the one I'm working on now, you can see that I've done a couple of more rounds of, at least one more round of my main color beads. So just continue working, and then we will come back and just add the accent beads. So we'll peyote up and roll all the way to the top, just like we've been doing. I've got a really nice cup shape going on my leaf now, and I'm very happy with it. And remember that top peyote stitch goes into the bead on the herringbone stitch. And then it's time to turn with the herringbone stitch. Pick up two, sew down that very next bead. And then just simply peyote down the other side to finish this round. If I can keep my bead on my needle, that is helpful. So, funny story, I already recorded this video, I thought, last week. And basically, when I went to edit it, not only this one, but another one as well, I had really not recorded over half of the projects. All right, so I'm adding this last bead. And to make the turnaround a little more easy to understand, I am going to go ahead and just sew through that top bead sticking out right there. That is where I need to stitch the bead into position. Once again, we're exiting from the bottom of our last digging out bead, but we need to be exiting this bead, sewing in the opposite direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew up through the bead right beside the one I'm exiting, and once again, I'm going to go into that bead above it on the diagonal. And try not to push too hard and pull your beadwork out of shape. It comes back into shape relatively easily, but just be careful with it. So then the next thing we need to do is just sew back down that bead right next to the one we're exiting. Just like this. Pull. And then all we have to do is sew up through the very last bead we added, and we're ready to go again. So I think I'm going to stop with my main color and just go ahead and start adding some accent beads. When you're working, if you're working on, several that you want to be alike, you can compare where you want to add the accent beads. So basically, on this particular one, I am in good shape because this is where I added my accent bead. You can see that they line up. All right, so now I'm going to just pick up an accent color, and I'm going to use my olivine. And all I'm going to do is I am going to peyote up to the top with my pretty green. This time at the top, I'm going to add a cute little tip bead to make my turn. And all you have to do that is simply sew one bead through instead of two on your herringbone stitch. So carry on. And here I am at the top. I'm going to pick up one bead. I'm going to sew down through the herringbone stitch bead on the other side. And now I have this cute little tip at the top. And then I just go down the other side with my peyote. And I really want to give a good shout out to Pam Morrell. Put the links to her video. Maybe you guys will have more luck at the bottom than I had, and we'll be able to follow that straight along. And I hope she doesn't mind that I made some adjustments to figure it out on my own. Once I get down here at the bottom, I will try to end my threads. And there's a couple of different ways you can go about that. Probably the easiest way to do it is as you add this last bead, you're going to sew down through all 4 beads along the side on the diagonal. Pull that into position. Finish shaping your leaf. Get it as nice and curvy as you want. You can tug on that top bead like that to fix the curve on the opposite side, and then just pull your working thread here. And there we have it, our cute little leaf. Now what you can do is you can sew over until both of your working thread and tail thread are side by side. Tie some knots. Move away from that knot before you end that thread. Or you can simply weave the threads off. Remember to work on the diagonal because you're in peyote stitch and you don't want an exposed thread. All right, guys, that's it for this adorable sculpted leaf. Like I said, there's also the step-by-step written tutorial on the blog. You guys have a good day. I've got a couple of more leaf tutorials coming up. Some of them I already have videos for. Some of them I need to do the written form for. But I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.